Captain Jake Morrison walked across the bridge of his ship. The exploration vessel Harmony floated in empty space near the edge of human territory. Through the big window in front of him, he could see strange alien ships approaching. They looked like giant crystals that sparkled with their own light. Jake had been a starship captain for 15 years. He had seen many strange things in space, but never anything like this. The alien ships moved in perfect formation, making no sound that human ears could hear. But the ship's computers picked up something else. The aliens were making music. "Captain," said Commander Lisa Bell, looking up from her science station, "the aliens are still complaining about our noise. They want us to stop all music broadcasts right now." Jake rubbed his chin and thought about this. 3 days ago, the aliens had sent their first message to Earth. They called themselves Zelethans. Their message was simple, but confusing. They said humans were too loud. They said human music was chaos. They wanted it to stop. The problem was that humans had been sending music into space for over 100 years. Radio signals, television shows, and now starship communications all carried human songs and sounds across the galaxy. To humans, this seemed normal. To the Zelethans, it was the worst thing they had ever heard. Lieutenant Ben Carter sat at the communications desk. He was young, maybe 25 years old, with short brown hair and eager eyes. As he worked, he tapped his fingers on the edge of his control panel. The tapping made a steady rhythm that mixed with the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Ben did not even know he was doing it. Jake watched Ben tap and realized something important. The young officer was making music without thinking about it. His fingers found a beat that worked with the ship's sounds. This was what humans did. They found music everywhere. "Sir," Ben said, still tapping, "I have been studying their ship frequencies. The aliens make beautiful sounds, but they are all perfectly mathematical. Every note is exactly where math says it should be. There is no change, no surprise, no feeling." Dr. Amy Foster stood near the back of the bridge. She was the ship's expert on alien cultures, a thin woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been listening to Zelethan transmissions for 3 days straight. "Captain," Amy said, "I think we have a big misunderstanding here. The Zelethans think music is pure science. They believe sound should follow exact mathematical rules. But humans think differently. We think science can be another kind of music." The communication system crackled to life. The Zelethan leader's voice came through the ship's speakers. The computer translated his words into English, but the voice still sounded strange and cold. "Human vessel Harmony," the alien said. "I am Resonance Keeper Vorth. Your species creates disorder from order. You make noise from silence. This cannot continue. Your chaotic sound transmissions must stop immediately." Jake looked around his bridge. Ben was still tapping, now using both hands to create a more complex rhythm. Lisa was humming quietly while she worked at her science station. From the engine room below, he could hear Chief Engineer Kate Phillips singing an old Earth song as she checked the fusion reactor. This was normal for humans. They made music from everything. They turned work into rhythm. They found beats in the sound of machinery. They made melodies from the hum of life support systems. It was not something they decided to do. It was just part of being human. "Resonance Keeper Vorth," Jake said into the communication system. "I understand your concern, but I think there is something you need to understand about humans. We do not see music and science as different things. To us, everything can be an instrument." There was a long pause. Jake could imagine the alien leader trying to understand what that meant. "Explain," Vorth finally said. Jake smiled. He had an idea that might work. It was risky. It could start a war between humans and aliens. Or it could create the most beautiful moment in the history of space exploration. Let me show you what humans really do with sound, Jake said. Will you listen? To a demonstration? We will observe, Vorth replied. But if this is more chaos, we will take action to stop it. Jake turned to his crew. He did not need to give orders. Every human on the ship already understood what needed to happen. It was instinct. It was what humans did when they needed to. Communicate something important. Ben stopped tapping and cracked his knuckles. Lisa closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Amy moved to her own station and started preparing something on her computer. Throughout the ship, Jake knew that other crew members were getting ready too. Begin whenever you are ready, Jake said quietly. Ben started with a simple beat on his control panel. Not random tapping this time, but a clear, steady rhythm that echoed through the bridge. Down in the engine room, Kate heard the beat through the ship's communication system. She began adjusting the fusion reactor's power output to create a deep, thrumming bass line that matched Ben's rhythm. Navigator Paul Adams started whistling a soft melody. At the same time, he moved his hands through the electromagnetic fields around the sensor array. The sensors picked up his hand movements and turned them into electronic sounds that blended with his whistling. Dr. Foster opened the food preparation system and began using the molecular assembly sounds as another layer of rhythm. The machine made soft beeping and clicking noises as it worked. Amy timed these sounds to match what the others were doing, but it was Communications Officer Mary Santos who created something special. She took the Zelithan's own perfect mathematical frequencies and began weaving them into the human composition. She found the empty spaces between the alien notes and filled them with human sounds that somehow made the alien music more beautiful than it had been alone. Through the communication channel, Jake could hear complete silence from the Zelithan ships. They were listening to something they had never heard before. Humans were not fighting their perfect mathematics. Instead, they were making the mathematical perfection part of something larger and more alive. The demonstration lasted for 5 minutes. When it ended, the silence stretched on for a long time. Finally, Resonance Keeper Vorth spoke. His translated voice sounded different now, less cold, more confused. Impossible, he whispered. You created harmony from chaos. You made beauty from disorder. How is this possible? Ben Carter looked directly at the communication screen. The young lieutenant's face was serious, but not afraid. Because to us, everything is an instrument, Ben said simply. Even talking to you right now. That is music too. The silence from the Zelithan ships stretched on for several minutes. Captain Jake Morrison could see their crystal vessels hanging in space like frozen music notes. He knew that inside those ships, alien minds were trying to understand what they had just heard. Captain, whispered Dr. Amy Foster, their ship frequencies are changing. They are analyzing what we did, breaking it down into mathematical patterns. Jake nodded. He expected this. The Zelithans thought in numbers and equations. They would try to solve human music like a math problem. But that was not how human music worked. Ben Carter was still sitting at his station, but now he was quiet. His hands rested on his control panel without moving. A sudden silence felt strange after the musical demonstration. Other crew members throughout the ship had stopped their activities too, waiting to see what would happen next. Human Captain Morrison, came Resonance Keeper Vorth's voice through the speakers. We have studied your demonstration. We find mathematical relationships in your chaos, but they do not follow proper harmonic laws. How do you create patterns that should not exist? Jake looked at his crew. They were all humans who had grown up with music as part of their daily lives. They sang while they worked. They hummed when they were happy. They tapped rhythms when they were thinking. None of them had to learn how to do this. It was natural. Resonance Keeper. Jake said, would you like us to show you more? I think your people need to see something else about how humans use sound. We will observe, Vorth replied. But we do not understand your methods. Jake pressed a button that connected him to the entire ship. All crew members. This is the captain. We are going to show our alien friends what humans can really do with music. Everyone participate in your own way. Make this ship sing. The response was immediate. Down in the cargo bay, Maintenance Chief Carl Turner fired up his welding torch. But instead of doing normal repair work, he began creating controlled plasma arcs that sang as they moved through the ship's magnetic fields. The plasma made high, bright notes that danced around the deeper engine sounds dot in the hydroponics section. Botanist Helen Pierce opened the air circulation controls. She adjusted the fans and vents to push air through the plant chambers at different speeds. The moving air created soft, windy melodies as it passed through leaves and stems. The plants themselves became part of a giant wind instrument. Medical officer Dr. Nina Clark started using her medical scanners in a new way. The sonic pulses that normally checked for injuries could also create rhythm patterns. She set up several scanners to pulse at different speeds, creating a complex beat that spread through the medical section. But the real magic happened when all these different sounds began to work together. Kate Phillips in the engine room listened to what everyone else was doing and adjusted her fusion reactor to match. The deep bass notes from the reactor became the foundation that held all the other sounds together. Ben Carter started his finger, tapping again, but this time he was not making his own rhythm. He was conducting the entire ship like a music director. When the cargo bay plasma got too loud, he tapped faster to signal the engine room to increase power. When the hydroponics wind section needed more volume, he made larger gestures that the botanist could see through the ship's camera system. Mary Santos took her job as communications officer to a new level. She began broadcasting everything the ship was doing to the Zealothan vessels. But she did not just send the sounds. She mixed them, balanced them, and made them clearer. She turned the ship's communication system into a recording studio. Navigator Paul Adams found that he could use the ship's movement through space as another instrument. By making tiny adjustments to their position and speed, he created Doppler effects that added more layers to the ship's song. The harmony was not just making music anymore. It was dancing through space. Dr. Foster realized that even the life support systems could join in. The air recyclers, water pumps, and waste processors all made their own sounds. She began timing their cycles so that they added percussion beats to the overall composition. Even the most basic systems needed to keep humans alive were now part of the music. The most amazing part was that none of this was planned. No human had written down what notes to play or when to play them. They were all improvising, creating music in real time by listening to each other and responding. This was something uniquely human, the ability to create organized beauty from unorganized creativity. Through the communication channel, Jake could hear new sounds coming from the Zealothan ships. Their perfect crystal harmonies were still there, but now they sounded different. The aliens were trying to respond to the human music. They were attempting to improvise. Fascinating, came Vorth's voice, but now it sounded less cold and more curious. Your crew members are not following written instructions. They are creating new patterns as they perform. Each individual chooses their own contribution, yet somehow it forms a unified whole. That is right, Jake replied, still listening to his ship sing around him. Humans do not need someone to tell them what music to make. We listen to what others are doing and find our own way to add to it. But how? Do you maintain harmony without mathematical precision? Vorth asked. Then Carter answered before Jake could speak. We do not try to be mathematically perfect. We try to be emotionally perfect. We make music that feels right, not music that calculates right. The young lieutenant's words seemed to echo through both the human ship and the alien vessels. 4. Several moments. The only sounds were the ongoing musical collaboration between human crew members and the gentle, harmonic responses from the Zealothan ships. Emotional perfection, Vorth repeated slowly. Music that feels correct rather than music that measures correctly. This is a concept we have never considered. Jake smiled. The aliens were beginning to understand something important about humans. They were starting to see that human chaos was not really chaos at all. It was organized in a different way, organized by feeling and creativity rather than by mathematics and rules. Would you like to try making music with us? Jake asked. The pause was shorter this time. When Vorth answered, his voice carried something that had not been there before. Hope. Yes, the Zealothan leader said. We would like to learn how to feel music instead of just calculating it. 3 weeks after the first musical contact with the Zealothans, Captain Jake Morrison found his ship surrounded by vessels from across the galaxy. Word about the human demonstration had spread faster than anyone expected. Ships from 12 different alien species now floated around the Harmony, all wanting to see what humans could do with sound. Captain, said Commander Lisa Bell, looking worried as she studied her sensors. We have Corellian digital music ships, Vashti tone language vessels, and even an ethereal energy craft. I have never seen so many different species in one place. Jake stood on his bridge and looked out at the alien fleet. Each ship was completely different. The Corellian vessels looked like giant computers with silver walls covered in blinking lights. The Vashti ships were organic, grown rather than built, with surfaces that pulsed like living skin. The ethereal craft was barely visible, more like a cloud of glowing particles than a solid ship. Ben Carter was at his communication station, trying to manage conversations with all the different aliens at once. Sir, the Corellians say they can calculate perfect harmonies in microseconds. The Vashti communicate only through musical tones. The ethereals claim their ships are musical instruments that sing as they fly through space. Dr. Amy Foster had been studying the new arrivals. 4 days. Captain, each species has their own relationship with sound. The Corellians see music as a mathematical puzzle to solve. The Vashti use sound as language. The ethereals become music when they move, but none of them understand what humans do. The challenge came from Harmony Master Keth, leader of the Corellian fleet. His translated voice came through the ship's speakers with mechanical precision. Humans of the vessel Harmony, Keth said, we have observed your crude attempts at sound manipulation. If your species truly believes everything can become an instrument, then prove this claim. Create music from nothing. Make harmony where none should exist. Jake felt his crew tense around him. This was different from their demonstration with the Zealothans. The Corellians were not asking them to show their music. They were challenging humans to do something impossible. What do they mean by nothing? Asked Ben. Dr. Foster checked her readings. The Corellians have chosen a location for the challenge. It is an empty asteroid field between star systems. No atmosphere, no life, nothing but floating rocks and cosmic radiation. They want us to make music where no sound should be possible. Jake thought about this. In space, there was no air to carry sound waves. Traditional music was impossible. But humans had never been limited by what was supposed to be possible. Set course for the asteroid field, Jake ordered, and send a message to all the alien ships. Tell them we accept the challenge. 2 days later, the human ship Harmony floated in the middle of the empty asteroid field. Hundreds of asteroids drifted around them in slow, random patterns. The alien observer ships positioned themselves at safe distances, their sensors focused on the human vessel. Begin when ready, came Harmony Master Keth's voice. Show us how you create music from emptiness. Jake looked at his crew. They all seemed calm, but he could see them thinking. How do you make music in a place where music should not exist? Pilot Steve Cooper had the first idea. Captain, what if we use the asteroids themselves? Steve began using the ship's gravitational manipulators to move nearby asteroids into specific positions. The rocks, influenced by each other's gravity, began to create slow orbital patterns. As they moved closer and farther from each other, they created a deep, slow rhythm that could be felt through the ship's hull, even if it could not be heard. Engineer Kate Phillips watched the asteroid dance and had her own inspiration. If we cannot use air to carry sound, we can use electromagnetic fields. Kate turned the ship's defensive shields into a massive speaker system. The electromagnetic fields began to vibrate, creating waves that traveled through the sparse gas and dust. Between asteroids, the solar wind became her instrument, channeled and focused through the ship's magnetic deflectors. But it was Dr. Foster who made the real breakthrough. She was studying the ship's sensor readings when she noticed something amazing. Captain, she said with excitement in her voice, the cosmic background radiation is not just random energy. It has patterns. It is the echo of the Big Bang, still traveling through space after billions of years. We can convert it into sound. Amy began using the ship's most sensitive sensors to detect the faint electromagnetic echoes from the beginning of the universe. She fed this data through the computer systems, translating cosmic radiation into audible frequencies. Listen, she broadcast to the alien fleet. This is the universe singing, the birth sound of all creation, still echoing after billions of years. We are not making music from nothing. We are learning to hear what was always there. Then Carter understood immediately. He began using the ship's position thrusters to create percussion beats in space. Each tiny course correction became part of a larger pattern. The harmony itself was dancing through the asteroid field, moving in time with the cosmic symphony they were discovering. Navigator Paul Adams found that he could use the asteroids' rotation as rhythm sections. By tracking how each rock spun and tumbled, he created timing patterns that matched the gravitational pulses Steve was orchestrating. Medical Officer Dr. Nina Clark contributed by monitoring the biological rhythms of all the crew members. She used the combined heartbeats, breathing patterns, and brain waves of 43 humans to create a life rhythm that became the foundation for everything else. The most beautiful part came when Mary Santos began weaving together all these different elements. She took the cosmic background radiation, the gravitational asteroid dance, the electromagnetic field vibrations, and the human life rhythms, and combined them into something that had never existed before. The alien observers listened in complete silence. The humans had taken an empty region of space and revealed its hidden music. More than that, they had shown that music was not something you made from materials. Music was something you discovered in the relationships between things. Impossible, whispered Harmony Master Keth. You find rhythm in randomness. You discover patterns in chaos. You hear melodies in the structure of space itself. Resonance Keeper Vorth, who had brought his Zealothan ships to observe, added his own amazement. Humans do not see silence and sound as opposites. They see them as different parts of the same song. Captain Jake Morrison smiled as he watched his crew continue their cosmic performance. Around them, asteroids danced to gravitational rhythms, while cosmic radiation provided the universe's own background music. We do not create music, Jake replied to all the alien observers. We just help everything else remember how to sing. The demonstration continued for 2 hours. When it ended, representatives from all 12 alien species requested permission to come aboard the Harmony. They wanted to learn how humans could find music in places where music should not exist. For the first time in galactic history, beings from completely different worlds were united by a single idea. Everything in the universe was connected by invisible rhythms, and humans had learned how to hear them all. 6 months after the asteroid field demonstration, the old human colony ship New Hope had become something no one had ever imagined. A massive vessel now served as the galaxy's first school for interspecies music, floating in orbit around Earth. With students from over 50 different alien worlds, Captain Jake Morrison walked through corridors that had been redesigned to accommodate beings who breathed different gases, lived in different gravity levels, and experienced sound in completely different ways. The ship hummed with constant activity as hundreds of species learned to make music together. "Captain," said Commander Lisa Bell, now serving as the school's Director of Species Relations, "we have a problem in Section C. The Hydran students are flooding their practice rooms again, and the geode crystalline beings cannot function in that much water." Jake nodded. These were the kinds of problems no one had expected when they started this project. The Hydrans were aquatic beings who needed water to make their pressure wave music. The geodes were living crystal creatures who created sound by changing their molecular structure. Water and crystals did not mix well. "What does Dr. Foster suggest?" Jake asked. "She wants to try building combination practice rooms where different species can work together despite their environmental needs." Lisa replied. Dr. Amy Foster had become the galaxy's leading expert on interspecies musical cooperation. Her research showed that every species had developed their own relationship with sound based on how they had evolved. But she had also discovered something amazing. When different species worked together, they could create music that none of them could make alone. In the school's main practice hall, Ben Carter was conducting the strangest orchestra anyone had ever seen. He was now Lieutenant Commander Carter, but he still had the same enthusiasm for rhythm that had impressed the Zelathans months ago. The orchestra included Clicking Stone, a geode whose crystal body could resonate with radio frequencies from across the galaxy. Fluid Dancer was a Hydran who created percussion by controlling the movement of water through specially designed chambers. Quantum Singer was a Corellian whose digital consciousness could compose music in real time, while simultaneously performing on dozens of virtual instruments. "Today we are going to attempt something that has never been done before," Ben announced to his diverse group of students. "We are going to create a piece of music that will be meaningful to every known species at the same time." This seemed impossible. What could a methane-breathing crystalline being have in common with an energy-based ethereal? How could music speak to creatures who experienced sound through vibrations in their rocky bodies, and others who experienced it as patterns of light? The answer came from the most human approach possible. They decided to make the attempt itself into the music. "Every species has something they are trying to communicate," explained Dr. Nina Clark, who had become an expert in how different alien biology affected musical perception. "Instead of trying to find one thing that means the same to everyone, we will create something where every species can contribute their own meaning." The project took weeks to plan. Each species would use their natural abilities and their technology as instruments. But more importantly, each species would express something fundamental about their own existence. The Zelathans, with their mathematical precision, would provide the structural foundation. Their crystalline ships would create perfect, harmonic relationships that other species could build upon. But they had learned from humans to leave spaces in their perfection, places where chaos could add beauty. The Corellians would contribute their computational power, calculating complex harmonies that changed in real time based on what other species were doing. But instead of trying to control the music, they would let their calculations respond to the emotions and creativity of others. The Hydrans would use their ocean world experience to create flowing, wave-like melodies that could carry the contributions of land-based species. Their pressure wave expertise would provide rhythms that could be felt by creatures who could not hear traditional sound. The geodes would serve as living resonators, their crystal bodies amplifying and harmonizing the sounds created by others. Each geode could tune their molecular structure to specific frequencies, becoming a living instrument that could adapt to whatever music was being created around them. The ethereals, beings of pure energy, would provide the visual component. They would dance between the other performers, their movements creating light patterns that serve as another form of music for species who experience sound through electromagnetic radiation. But it was the humans who provided the most important element, the willingness to embrace beautiful mistakes. Other species planned their music, men explained to the mixed group of students. Humans plan to be surprised by their music. We start with an idea, but we let the music change the idea as we play. The first full rehearsal was a disaster. The Corellian calculations could not keep up with human improvisation. The hydron water pressure rhythms conflicted with geode crystal resonances. The ethereal light dance was too fast for the Zelithan mathematical harmonies. But instead of giving up, the students did something very human. They made the disaster part of the music. "Listen," said Fluid Dancer, the hydron student. "The conflicts are not problems. They are conversations. My water rhythms are arguing with clicking stone's crystal tones. This argument has its own beauty." "Yes," agreed Quantum Singer, the Corellian. "My calculations are trying to predict human improvisation, but humans keep surprising my predictions. The surprise itself creates new mathematical relationships." Dr. Foster, observing from the side of the rehearsal hall, realized what was happening. "You are not just making music together," she told the students. "You are teaching each other new ways to exist. The hydrons are learning to be more solid, like geodes. The geodes are learning to be more fluid, like hydrons. The Corellians are learning to value surprise, like humans." The breakthrough came when they stopped trying to blend their differences and started celebrating them instead. The final composition, which they called Everything Sings, could not be performed by any single species. It required the mathematical precision of Corellians, the harmonic purity of Zelithans, the fluid dynamics of hydrons, the resonant capabilities of geodes, the light patterns of ethereals, and the creative chaos of humans. More importantly, it required each species to use not just their biology, but their technology, their culture, and their entire way of understanding the universe as instruments. When the first complete performance was broadcast across the galaxy, something unprecedented happened. On thousands of worlds, beings who had never heard music from other species began to understand that they were not alone in the universe. Every species was trying to express the same thing, the joy and wonder of being alive. Captain Morrison stood in the observation deck of New Hope, watching ships from across the galaxy arrive to hear the interspecies orchestra. Representatives from species that had been enemies for centuries were requesting to attend performances together. "We did not teach them that everything is an instrument," he said quietly to Dr. Foster. "We showed them how to hear that everything already was." The galaxy was changing. Music was becoming the universal language that connected all thinking beings. And at the center of it all were humans, the species that had learned to find rhythm in chaos and harmony in difference. 5 years after first contact with the Zelithans, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of a ship unlike anything that had ever existed. The Harmony had become the flagship of the Galactic Resonance Fleet, a collection of vessels from every known species working together to explore the musical properties of the universe itself. The bridge now accommodated 7 different atmospheric requirements and 11 different gravity preferences. Jake's crew included beings who existed as pure sound waves, others who were living crystals, and some who were quantum consciousness patterns inhabiting mechanical bodies. Communication happened through a mixture of spoken words, harmonic frequencies, light patterns, and rhythms tapped on specially designed surfaces. "Captain," said Dr. Amy Foster, her hair now completely silver, but her enthusiasm as strong as ever. "We are approaching the target coordinates. The black hole is exactly where our calculations predicted. Jake looked out at space where nothing seemed to be visible. But his instruments showed the truth. Ahead of them was a massive black hole, so dense that not even light could escape its gravity. Around it spun a bright disk of superheated matter, glowing as it fell toward the event horizon. This was humanity's most ambitious musical project yet. They were going to attempt to make music with a black hole. The event horizon creates natural frequency shifts, Amy explained to the mixed crew. If we position our ships correctly, we can use the gravitational effects to create resonance patterns with the spinning matter disk. Admiral Kate Phillips, formerly the chief engineer of the Harmony, had spent months designing ships that could survive the enormous gravitational forces while maintaining the ability to create music. Each vessel in the fleet was positioned at a specific distance from the black hole, creating a three-dimensional instrument that stretched across several solar systems. "All ships report ready," announced Ben Carter, now Captain Carter of the experimental vessel Rhythm. His ship was designed specifically for creating percussion in space, using controlled matter-antimatter reactions to generate beats that could travel through the fabric of space-time itself. The performance began with the Zelithan vessels. Their crystalline hulls resonating with the exact mathematical frequencies of the black hole's rotation. Resonance Keeper Vorth, now an old friend and frequent collaborator, had calculated harmonies that matched the natural oscillations of space-time around the massive object. "Initiating harmonic baseline," Vorth announced, his voice transmitted across the fleet through quantum communication systems that could function despite the intense gravitational fields. The Corellian ships added their digital complexity next. Their quantum computers calculated harmonies in the space-time distortions around the event horizon, creating mathematical music that existed in dimensions beyond normal human perception. But thanks to years of working with humans, they no longer aimed for cold perfection. Their calculations now included chaos variables that made their music alive and unpredictable. Ben Carter provided the human element, the rhythm section that would hold everything together. Using his ship's specialized systems, he created percussion beats that propagated through space itself. Each controlled explosion was carefully timed to complement the black hole's natural oscillations, creating a beat that could be felt on planets light years away. The Hydron ships used their water-filled chambers to create fluid dynamics that matched the spiral patterns of the accretion disk. As matter fell toward the black hole in elegant spirals, the Hydrons created water music that followed the same mathematical curves, turning gravitational physics into liquid melody. The geode crystalline beings positioned their ships to create resonance harmonics with the gravitational waves rippling out from the black hole. Each geode vessel was essentially a living tuning fork, vibrating in harmony with the fundamental frequencies of warped spacetime. The ethereals, beings of pure energy, danced between all the other ships. Their movements created electromagnetic patterns that served as the visual component of the performance, painting aurora-like displays across the event horizon as their energy fields interacted with the black hole's magnetic systems. But as the performance reached its peak, something completely unexpected happened. Other black holes throughout the galaxy began responding to their music. Gravitational wave detectors on thousands of worlds registered patterns that could not be natural. The black holes were answering back. "Captain," Dr. Nina Clark called out, her voice filled with wonder as she monitored readings from across the galaxy. "We are not just making music with one black hole. We are conducting an orchestra of black holes. They are all starting to vibrate, in harmony with each other." Jake watched his instruments in amazement. Gravitational waves from dozens of black holes were synchronizing into patterns that would continue for millions of years. They had not just created a song. They had created a rhythm that would echo through the galaxy long after every current. Civilization had ended. A universe was already singing, he realized aloud. We just learned how to hear it and taught it how to hear itself. From his observation post, Resonance Keeper Vorth made an announcement that would be remembered throughout. Galactic history. Humans have shown us that the universe is not silent. It was never silent. We simply did not know how to listen. The performance continued for 12 hours, with ships from across the galaxy joining in as word spread. By the end, over 300 vessels from 67 different species were participating in the largest musical collaboration in known history. When it finally ended, the gravitational wave patterns continued. The black holes across the galaxy had learned to sing together, creating a rhythm that astronomers would detect for generations to come. Captain Morrison stood quietly on his bridge, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy, all united by the discovery that everything in the universe was connected by invisible music. Humans had not brought music to the galaxy. They had revealed that the galaxy was already singing, had always been singing, waiting for someone to teach it how to harmonize with itself. Everything is an instrument, Jake said softly, watching as gravitational waves from the performance rippled outward toward distant galaxies. Even time itself, even space itself, even the universe itself. As the fleet began its journey back to inhabited space, every species carried with them a new understanding. The universe was vast and filled with wonders beyond imagination. But perhaps the greatest wonder was that with the right perspective, the right creativity, and the right willingness to listen, everything from the smallest quantum vibration to the largest galactic structure could be part of one magnificent, eternal song, and humanity would forever be remembered as the species that taught the galaxy how to dance to the music that had always been there, waiting to be heard.